Well, hello, I'm Simon Phipps, and I'm unfortunately not in Porto Alegre able to speak to you today at FISL. I was supposed to be getting on a plane yesterday, but unfortunately a tooth broke in my mouth and I had to go to the dentist to have that tooth repaired, and so I've been unable to come down. My deepest apologies for this. I'm very keen to attend FISL. I've attended FISL for several years now, and I'm going to be back next year for the 10th anniversary of FISL, which I think is one of the greatest free software conferences in the world. Standing in for me today is going to be my colleague Jean Elliott, and Jean is very deeply involved in the free software world and in the Java software platform from Sun. And she's fairly new to presenting at conferences, so please treat her gently. I'd like to tell you a little about what I would have spoken about if I'd been able to be with you today. The things I was going to speak to you about today, I was going to tell you about the pressures that I'm seeing on free software as it goes mainstream. Free software has become one of the most important forces in the world of computer software today. According to Gartner, it will form a part of 90% of software products within 5 years. And that means we're going to see, as part of the free software community, a very large number of commercial software developers beginning to be part of our community. We have to be ready for that. We have to be ready to welcome them in. We have to be ready to keep them honest and make them be good citizens of the free software movement. And we have to be ready for the legal pressures that they bring with them. We have to be ready for the pressures on licensing, and more importantly, for the pressures that their use of trademarks and their use of software patents is going to place on us. It's very important for us as a free software community to start now working out what our policies are going to be about the use of trademarks and the use of software patents in free software, just as the open source initiative did in working out what free licenses were going to mean. Software patents are a huge threat to free software, and it's very important that we use licenses like the GPL v3 or the CDDL or the Apache software license, which deal with software patents and share the rights that software developers who own those patents have with the rest of us out in the software and free software communities. The other thing that I was going to speak to you about was about the shift that I'm seeing in thinking about how software gets into businesses. Up to this point, free software-based businesses like MySQL or like Red Hat have worked by making free software look as if it's proprietary software, something that you can buy. But increasingly, I'm seeing software entering businesses by another path. The model that we're moving from is something that I call a procurement-driven model. This is a model where a business, knowing it needs software, writes a specification and goes to companies asking them to tender for business and say what they would sell if they had to meet that need. The procurement process goes through a request for proposals, the submission of tenders, the evaluation of the tenders against the specifications, and then the evaluation of software, then the payment of software licenses, and then the process of bringing the software into the business can begin. That process is well proven, and I would bet that most of the people in this room today who are in employment as software developers are familiar with that process. But something new is happening in the world of software. I'm seeing software entering business using what I call an adoption-led process. This is where development teams in a business begin to sketch out prototypes of software that meet the needs of the business. They get free software from the internet and they build solutions in tools like NetBeans and Eclipse that begin to meet the need that their business has. Those solutions are evaluated, tested, checked out. They're improved by the addition of new software or the removal of software that doesn't seem to work right. And eventually, the adoption team produces software which can be beta tested and maybe put out onto a limited deployment within the company. Finally, the software is proven and it begins to be deployed within the company in production use. Along that line of adoption towards deployment, there comes a point when the business begins to want to know that it can get bugs fixed in the software, that it can get new versions easily installed, that maybe it can get warranties or maybe even indemnities on the software. And at that point, companies begin to be willing to spend money with vendors for maintenance, feature creation, warranty, indemnity, defect resolution, and so on. And at that point, as the software is going into production, as the business is getting value from the software, that's the point at which people spend money. In this adoption-led business, you don't see a salesman. You don't buy a software license. Instead, your adoption team puts together a solution for you, and then you, towards deployment time, think about whether you want to hire the people with the skills to keep the software running, or whether you want to buy a subscription from a vendor to keep the software running, or maybe the software is playing a role in your company where you don't need either, where you can just run it and take the risk with the software. This new model is what I call an adoption-led model, and it changes the way that we think about software as a software vendor like Sun Microsystems, as a software consumer like most of your businesses, and as a service provider like many companies that are emerging in Brazil today. It changes the way we think as a software vendor. We no longer sell licenses for software. We assume you will get the software as free software on the internet. Instead, what Sun sells is subscriptions. Those subscriptions give you updates. They give you the right to have bugs fixed. They give you a warranty and an indemnity that you can use. They give you a reliable and predictable service plan where you can call for help. We've applied that model throughout our software portfolio. So today, you can get Solaris from Sun and deploy it in any way you want without ever contacting Sun. And then we assume that when you go into production, you'll want to buy a subscription that will give you the updates and the service availability. We've done the same with Java. We introduced a product called Java SE for Business just 2 weeks ago. We do the same for Glassfish, the application server. We offer developer support incidents for NetBeans. We, of course, have purchased the company MySQL, and MySQL sells its software this way. We provide support for OpenOffice.org. And so you can see we've changed the whole way we deliver software. We've moved away from selling licenses, and we've become a company which provides free software and then waits for adopters to come to us to purchase subscriptions. This also changes the way that you, in your companies, will acquire software. You no longer need to be worrying so much about the procurement process, and you should no longer be preventing software entering your business if it doesn't meet your procurement process. Instead, you should have good policies for how you evaluate open source and free software licenses and communities. You should have a list of the components that you are willing to accept in assembled solutions that can be adopted by your company. And you should have a policy for evaluating subscription providers for the software that you're putting into production. This is quite a change from the way that software has been procured up until now, but it's a necessary change, and it's particularly a necessary change in government procurement policies. Finally, it changes the way that we should educate our software developers for the future. We need to educate software developers to participate in communities, to use free software tools, to contribute back, and to have the social skills to operate within developer communities. So much is changing, and we're at a critical moment now in the future of computer software. And so with that, I'd like to thank you very much for listening to me speaking to you via video. I apologize for not being able to come to you, but I am keeping the faith and making sure that I'm getting ready for the next time I can come to Brazil. And so with that, I'd like to hand over now to my colleague, Jean Elliott. Thank you very much.